this video, we are going to discuss cloud storage, not just any specific cloud storage. We are going to discuss Microsoft Azure storage. We are not discussing AWS or GCP today. That's for some other day, right? So Microsoft Azure storage can seem pretty daunting if you are new to it. If you are using it for the first time, it may seem kind of confusing that why do we have so many different types of storages. I'm here to answer that, right? So we are going to start with something called as a storage account. Okay, so what's a storage account? Well, you can create many kinds of storages in Microsoft Azure. You can create a blob, you can create a file storage, you can create a table, you can create a queue. Well, what is a storage account? Storage account acts as a management umbrella over all these storages. Any storage that you are going to create, again, I'm repeating, whether it's a blob, a file share, a queue, or a table, or a table, they are going to be created under a storage account. Now, again, you can create a storage account within your subscription in Azure, right? So that's not a big deal. It's just a prerequisite that you need in order to manage any kind of storage. So all the storages that you're creating right here on the board are going to fall under the storage account. So no need to give this way too much attention. No need to give this way too much of weight, right? We are going to get to storage accounts later on as well. I'm going to be making a dedicated video of this as well. Okay, so these are different types of storages that are available in Microsoft Azure. Well, all of these have a different purpose, right? And that's what we are here to discuss. Well, let's start with Blob right here. Okay, so Blob stands for binary large object based storage. So again, I'm repeating, binary large object based storage. Now, imagine any kind of cloud storage that you have ever seen. If you are new to cloud storage, the first answer that would pop up in your mind would probably be something like Google Drive, or might be like iCloud, something like that. So when I say cloud storage, you are thinking of something that is like OneDrive, your Google Drive, your iCloud. Basically, a storage that does not have a lot of rules, and you can just put on your data, keep it right there, and it's pretty simple to use. You can keep bulk files, you can keep bigger files there, and it's simple as hell. And there is a factor of simplicity there, right? And you're thinking, right, that actually is the blob storage. So when I say blob storage, blob means that there is a large storage that I'm providing it to you, right? Blob storage means I'm providing a large storage to you within your storage account. Now, how big that is? Well, if I go theoretically that's infinite amount of data. Now, what's infinite amount of data? Well, infinite could be for you. If you are going to store 1 MB of data and I'm going to give you 3 terabytes of space to store 1 MB of data, it's going to be infinite for you, right? If you're storing 2 terabytes of data and I'm going to give you 7 petabytes of data, 7 petabytes of space, again, that's going to be infinite for you. Infinite is a relative term. When I say infinite, I mean that all you can get. You can get as much storage as you desire within Blob, right? Blob storage is going to provide you as much storage as you desire, right? Well, a similar thing would be an S3 bucket in AWS, if you're familiar with that. Anyway, moving on. What is a blob, right? So blob is a very specific storage. It's like your Google Drive or iCloud, as I've said. So, well, while we are taking this example, while we are doing this comparison to Google Drive or with OneDrive, as far as the users are concerned, as far as the usage is concerned, you have been given infinite space. Okay, well, so what are you going to do with this infinite space? This is blank. You can upload any kind of file. Now, this is really interesting. In blob storage, you can upload any kind of file. Type is okay. Any kind of file. It could be MP3, it could be a video file, it could be a JPG file, it could be an Excel file. Anything that you can think. It could be a VHD file if you are into virtualization. You can put any type of file here. That's number one. Number two is the file size could be anything. It could be a small file that is as small as 1 kilobyte, 2 kilobytes, 3 kilobytes. It could be a huge file that could be 15 gigabytes, 20 gigabytes, 30 gigabytes. For a single file, you can upload it directly into the blob storage, right? It's going to support it, it's going to keep it no matter what. So the thing is, first of all, you do have no space restrictions. You can put as much data as you want to. And then there's this thing that you can put any kind of storage, any type of file that you want to. So type is not a problem. You can put any size of file that you want to. So any type, any size file, as much space as you want to. So this gives you a sort of independence, right? So this is a storage that is being managed in the backend by Microsoft. So you don't have to worry about the file system or file permissions or anything, right? And you can share these files wherever you want to. You can create a link to share these files. You can share them privately or you can share them publicly as well, right? We'll get into the details soon, right? So anyway, so you can create any type of file within the blob. What do you do within a blob? What do you do within any kind of storage? You try to create a folder, because you're going to put so many files into the storage. You would have to have certain number of folders in order to manage those files in different places. Otherwise, it's going to be very cumbersome. Okay, so what I'm going to do is that I can create multiple folders within this storage, and let's start calling this storage as Blob Storage at the moment. Now, there's a very specific reason as to why we don't call this a blob. We call this a blob storage. So keep that in mind for a second, it will be clear. Hold on. So this is a blob storage, and you're going to create multiple folders within these. These folders are actually called containers. We don't call them folders here, we just call them containers. No big deal, not much of a difference, so you can just call them containers for a while, right? And you can upload any kind of file right here. So you can upload it from your on-premises or you can upload it from your cloud. So the source could be anything, right? You can upload any size, any type of file as I discussed to this, and the files and the space that you consume could be anything, right? You can keep these files within these folders, okay, within these containers. What would these files be called? Once the files are being stored right here, those files are called blob. Now this is interesting. This is blob storage. This is a container. Container is a folder. Within the folder, the files that you upload or keep there, those files are called the blobs. If I'm going to download a file, technically I'm going to say, hey, I'm downloading a blob. Right? If I'm going to download multiple files, I'm downloading multiple blobs. Downloading a blob does not mean I'm downloading the whole thing. I'm just downloading a file. Any file that I uploaded. So just keep that in mind. It's fairly simple to use. You can use a tool called a Storage Explorer to navigate this easily. You can navigate this through Azure portal. You can use PowerShell. You can use Cloud Shell. Anything that you want, you can use to manage this, and you can use to navigate this. Right, so this is fairly simple. If you're getting started with the storage, blob is the way for you. And if you're looking for massive, cheap storage, it's really cheap, it's inexpensive, it's managed by Microsoft, so you don't have to worry about any kind of complications as far as the management of the storage is concerned. So it's simplifying your storage needs. Okay, so there are three types of blobs. By the way, there are three types of blobs. It's called page blob, block blob, and append blob. Well, page, block, and append blob. So, well, in a nutshell, I can give you I should give you a brief overview of what these are. We shall discuss all of these in detail very soon. Okay, so let's start with the page blob. Page blob is for random access. It's optimized for random access. So whenever you create a virtual machine or anything, if you are going to store your virtual machine hard disks that are supposed to be accessed quickly, so for the quicker access, you are going to go with page blob most of the time. So this is optimized for random access. Well, if you want to store bulk data like we have been discussing so far, just keep your data, throw it away, nobody cares about your data, it's just being stored in massive bulks. You are looking for a block blob. While you're uploading the file, it will ask you what kind of file is it. Is it a page, block, or append? Now, moving on to the third one. Third one is called the append blob. What does append mean? Append means to add. Append is equal to, well, I should write it like this. Append equals to add. Add, but at the end, right? You can't add before. So if there is a string of numbers like 3, 6, 7, 8, well, The next number, if I want to write 4, I can write only after this. And let me make this even more simpler, right? So, if I want to write A, B, C, D, F, G, now I realize, hey, I should have written E in between. So, but I can't remove this data and put an E. This cannot be done. Because this is an append operation, so F, G, and then you will be able to add E. So anything new that you're going to add to the data is going to be at the end of the data. For those kind of files that support these append operations, you go with append blob. You are going to upload them as append blob. Okay. Which files are those that only use append? There are no files that only use append. No, there are. There are files for which you don't change the past, but you append, you add things to the future of the file, or you add things to the present of the file without harming the past. Those files are called as log files. You can save your log files as append blobs. Okay, so we shall get back to this. We will discuss this more. Right, moving on to the next type of storage in Microsoft Azure. Let me clear this board up first. In Microsoft Azure, there's another kind of storage that is almost as popular as blob storage, but is kind of different in certain ways, right? Again, this is called as a file share, right? Azure Files is also another name. Azure File Share, as some people call it, it used to be called as Azure File Share, right? So, for sake of simplicity, let's write it like this: Azure File Share. Now, what is Azure File Share? Azure File Share is an SMB based file share. Now that might sound confusing. What is an SMB based file share? Well, have you heard of file server? What's a file server? File server is a server that you create on premises, right? It uses a protocol called SMB to share the files on the network, right? So it can share the files on the network. So anybody who's familiar with a file server, or there can be multiple computers that are connected to this file server, and these files there would be certain files that would be kept on the file server, and they are commonly available to everyone. They are commonly shared with everyone, and they can access these files as and when they want. So multiple people can access a single file share. This is called a file server, right? This could either be called a file server, or a similar thing is done by something called as your NFS, network file share in VMware, right? So not just VMware, it's another protocol that you use. You can either use SMB or NFS. That's a protocol. Okay, let's make it simple again. Let's make it simple again, right? If you have seen a file server is just a place where there are commonly kept files that everybody can access. That's number one, right? Something that is very similar to a file server would be a NAS device. Network attached storage, right? Again, network attached storage would be a smaller device, again, that would act as a file server. It will have many files that would be common to everyone. Anybody would be able to take who has the permission to access those files. Again, now there's a problem with these. First of all of these are on-prem. You will need to have a NAS device on-prem, first of all, or you will need to have a file server on-prem, right? So what do I need is I need to move my data to the cloud, right? And there are certain problems with these things being on-prem as well. First of all, it's very difficult to manage a file server, right? It gets cumbersome, the files get out of order, some people have been keeping files somewhere, some people have been keeping files somewhere else. So if you see a file server that has been working for over a few years, you would see it's a mess. It is a mess. It's very difficult to manage it, it's very difficult to cleanse it. Anybody who's watching this video and manages a file server would probably relate to what I'm saying, right? If you're using a NAS, if you're using SMB, if you're using file server, or if you're using NAS, it's going to be kind of difficult for you. And another problem is that when multiple people are using the files, maybe you keep a copy of data, this person keeps a copy of data, this person keeps a copy of data. Sometimes the files are the same. Maybe the file I'm writing is exactly the file that you are writing, right? Is exactly the file that you are keeping. So sometimes within one storage there are multiple copies of a single file, copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. And that just takes up space. That just creates duplicates. When there are a lot of duplicates in a storage, you are storing less stuff, but you're taking up more storage because there are duplicates. Okay, so there's this process called as deduplication that needs to be done. Again, that's a difficult process as and on its own. Now you see, what I was doing is that I was just counting the problems with the NAS and the file servers. There are certain problems with the NAS and file servers. Now, what we need to do is, or what Microsoft is proposing, is that we can put an end to this, right? You have a NAS, you have a file server, do one thing. What's that one thing? Is that move to Azure File Share. What is Azure File Share? On Microsoft Azure, Microsoft has created their own file server. Just for you. This file server is just for you, it's just a space, right? Again, you can scale this space up. You want it for 10 GBs, you can have it for 10 GB. You want it for 10 terabytes, you can have it for 10 terabytes. There are some space constraints. Well, that can be seen or discussed anyway. So there are certain space constraints as well, but it's flexible, right? If you want 1 GB of space or if you want 10 terabytes of space, you can get any space of the file server, and you can change the space anytime, which you could not have done, by the way, on your own premises. That would have been very difficult to do. So first of all, it's flexible, right? Second of all, there are so many people, these clients, these are client computers, and they could be on premises. Sometimes what I want to do is that you hear people that, hey, I just want a storage that I can map with my users. When my users open their file explorer, when my users open their explorers or their drive panel, they should see a drive, maybe like X drive, and that's a shared drive, or that's a shared storage that everyone is accessing. Can we do that with Blob? No, we cannot do that. But with file share, that's exactly what we are going to do. So what we do with file server is that you can directly map this drive to your computers, to your client computers that are on premises, right? So you just need to have an internet connection in order to access this file share. There are certain options for using it offline as well, where the changes get replicated as soon as you get connected to the internet. But the idea is that you can map the storage. So when you see or whenever your user opens up your file explorer, they see C drive is for the company, G drive is for the local computer, E drive is for the local computer, and then they see something like X drive. What is X drive? X drive is the file server, is the files that you have been storing on Azure, but the user experience is going to be exactly like that they have been using a NAS. Except for the part that this NAS is not on your premises, this NAS is in the cloud, this NAS is with Microsoft Azure, right? They are managing it, they are making sure that deduplication is taking place. If you are running out of space, you can increase the size of it. If you're using too much of, if you're not using that much of space, you can decrease the size. Now this is slightly more expensive than blob storage, but it's way more convenient if you want to map the drives. And by the way, it uses the exact same protocol as Microsoft file servers do. If you're using an on-prem server, that would use a protocol called as SMB. SMB stands for Server Message Block. Sometimes SMB 3.0 or 3.1, or let's call it 3.x for a moment, right? So SMB 3.x is used by the most latest Windows server that are converted into file servers. This one uses the exact same protocol to access the files. So file access protocol is exactly the same. It's SMB as it was with Windows Server. So again, if somebody has been using a Microsoft file server and they want to move to something that is more scalable and more easier to manage, again, go with this. Okay, so I hope that gives a brief overview of one more thing. So sometimes people ask that, hey, do we have any kind of backup or things that we can do with these storages? Microsoft is taking backup of your storages. There are at least 3 copies of your storage. Any kind of storage that you're using with Microsoft Azure, since you have a storage account, like we discussed earlier, any kind of storage that you're creating within a storage account, they are keeping at least 3 copies, at most 6 to 9 copies. We'll get to that part, but yes, the backup is being maintained by Microsoft, it's being managed by Microsoft at all times. So never will you see that your storage is not backed up. It's always backed up while you're using it. If you don't have to opt for any specific backup plan, it's already within there, right? It's in there. You can use that. It's already part of Microsoft Azure's storage plan, so you don't have to worry about backing up as well. Okay, moving on. We have something called as, again, these next two are kind of not very detailed, right? And not very widely used. But again, these are part of Microsoft's offering, so we are going to discuss them anyway. This is called queue storage. Well, if any developers are watching this video, well, you guys must be familiar with message queues or messaging queues, right? Whenever there are multiple applications that are, whenever there is an application that has multiple modules within them, that have multiple applications within them, they have these message queues that we have to maintain, and queue storage does that. For anyone who didn't get it, let me explain it in a very simple way, right? So, what happens is, let's say that you have an application, you have a big application, let's call this as app 1, right? The purpose of app 1 is to upload the files. Okay, this is not related to anything that we discussed so far, so consider this as a standalone example, so don't relate it with anything, just stay right here with this example. So let's say I just create an app 1, right? App 1 does this one thing, that it uploads the files. It takes the upload of the files and it shows the files or the images that have been uploaded onto the storage. It shows the thumbnail of that to the user. So anybody who's trying to upload the files using this tool, right, they should also see the thumbnail of the thing that has been uploaded, right? So this app would contain of, well, if I'm going to simplify this, allow me to do this. If this application is going to be created, it's going to be having these microprocessors, these smaller processes or these smaller applications within them, right? So this application is going to have two smaller applications. One application will be in charge of uploading the files. That whenever you want to upload the file, there is one part of the application that dealing with that, right? Another part of the application is in charge of the thumbnail part. Another part of the application is in charge of the thumbnail part, that the user is trying to see the thumbnail. Again, this is going to help you, right? So this is going to actually show the thumbnail. So every file that is being uploaded, technically this part A of the application and part B of the application must be always in sync with each other. Now pay attention here, if you are not into application development, or that's how things basically work in a nutshell. This is not an exhaustive process, this is just an example, right? So the part A of the application, which has the responsibility of uploading the things, it is going to, let's say for example, upload 500 images, right? It's going to upload into the drive 500 images, right? It's supposed to show the 500 images to the user, but process A is running on 500 times. It's going to run. What is the user going to see? User is going to see nothing, because A did not give the signal to B that this has a particular file has been uploaded. Now, what is happening as a user, what do you want ideally, is that when one image uploads, you should see the thumbnail of that. When second image is uploaded, you should see. Third, you should see the thumbnail. Fourth, you should see the thumbnail. I don't want that, okay, 500 images will upload, only when the last final image is uploaded, I get to see all the thumbnails. I don't want this. I don't want A to tell B that, hey man, I have uploaded all the files, here are the files, see the thumbnail. No. Or show the thumbnail. No, it's not going to happen like this. What I want is A to constantly tell B that, hey, I have uploaded picture 1, I have uploaded picture 2, I have uploaded picture 3, I have uploaded picture 4, so that B can take the thumbnail of picture 1, picture 2, picture 3 and picture 4, and it can show in almost real time, right? So this is called as something called as application messages, right? It's within the application. Within an application, there can be multiple parts of an application, right? So when these two parts communicate with each other, it's called application messages, and I need a particular type of storage to store it, right? Within the application. If my application is hosted on a cloud platform like Microsoft Azure. To store these application messages, I can use queue storage. It's very efficient, it's very simple to use. For anybody who has not used queue storage, just go for it, try it out, it's really awesome. Okay, anyway, so when I'm saying that these messages, application A in real time will be giving, hey, I have uploaded thumbnail 1, I have uploaded thumbnail 2, I have uploaded image 1, image 2, image 3, image 4. It's going to give several hundred messages to application, to the part B of the application. So that part B can read those messages. Where would those messages be? Those messages would be in the queue storage. And why is it called queue? Well, I hope that you guys have heard of this. FIFO, first in, first out. What is first in, first out? First person to join the queue is the first person to be treated. If I have like 7 or 8 people in the queue, first person is going to be treated, and second person will arrive, third person will arrive, fourth person, fifth person. In the similar way, first photograph, you'll get the thumbnail first, second photograph, you'll get the thumbnail second, fourth, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, so on and so follows, right? I hope that makes sense. So that is queue. It's first in, first out. Now, there is another storage. We are not going to go too much into detail with this because now recently it has been kind of merged with something called as Cosmos DB. Cosmos database, that is inherent part of Microsoft Azure's database itself, right? So that's a tabular storage. We'll get to that, but in a nutshell, what is table storage? Table storage is there for structured data, and it can be scaled for larger environment as well. For much large environments, it can be used for any size, any data sizes, right? So if you are going to create a structured data, if you are going to create sort of a simplistic form of a database, right? Tabular storage that you need is for you, right? For more detail on this, for more information on this, I would really suggest get more into Cosmos DB. We'll get into Cosmos DB very soon as well. Right, so recapping, all that we have done is that queue, table, file share, file share, and blob. Queue is again for application messages, first in, first out. Within the application, there are multiple parts, and those parts need to communicate with each other. And where do they store those application messages? Within the queue storage. So you can use queue storage for your applications that are already online, or applications that have been developed on Microsoft Azure or running on Microsoft Azure application services with them. Table storage is more like a part of Cosmos DB. Now we'll get and we'll do a deep dive of Cosmos DB, but in a nutshell, it's still a database, right? It's a highly scalable database. Then there is file share. File share is a replacement. It's a replacement for your on-prem file server, or it can act as a replacement for your on-prem NAS devices. Again, NAS devices are always on-prem, right? So it can act as a replacement for our file server and a NAS. Again, it uses SMB 3.x, 3.1, 3.0. Anyway. Then there is blob storage. It's like your stereotypical cloud storage. Technically infinite, any size of file, any type of file, any size, any type, any kind, simplest to use, cheapest, right? If I compare these two, blob is cheaper, right? If can I share the files through blob? Of course I can share the files through blob. But if I want to map the files, if I want to map the storage, I'm going to go with Azure File Share, right? So this is kind of like a brief overview of all of these things. Again, since we have discussed all of these would be part of something called as a storage account. If that is not visible, let me write it right here. So it's part of something called as a storage account. You have to create a storage account at least in order to use or in order to create any of the following storages, right? So you can use a queue, you can use a table, you can use a file share, you can use a blob. For that, you have to create a storage account first. There are multiple kinds of storage accounts. well, there are general purpose storage accounts, there are blob storage accounts, there are file share storage accounts. But in a nutshell, what we need at the moment to understand what storages are is that we need an SA, and for our specific needs, Microsoft provides us with specific storages, right? So I hope this cleared things up a bit. There would be more videos going in detail of each one of them separately, right? So thank you very much. I hope that cleared up a few things. Thanks a lot.